All right, good morning out there. Today is Wednesday, April 30th, 2025. I'm Anthony, and this is Drive Dive. So, I wanted to talk a little bit more, a lot to talk about, but I'll focus on scrolling ourselves to death. Book I've been trying to read a little bit here and there. I think I've read the intro, maybe a couple of chapters, and first chapter kind of focused on what they call dopamine entertainment and how what we choose to watch, a lot of it, short form, entertaining, right? Things that are going to make us laugh and not necessarily think a whole lot, but how it releases a dopamine, effect and pleasurable experience, creates a pleasurable experience for us, not unlike gambling, where you're scrolling, pulling the lever, at a machine. Which the name of which is escaping me right now. It shows you how much I gamble. Slot machine. Thank you. And how a bunch of those turns that you take in the slot machine, a bunch of those short videos that you watch are duds. You get that occasional jackpot, and over time you need more and more of that to get the same overall effect as your body builds up, sort of resistance, right, to the dopamine that's released in your brain. But the book itself, is really written not just to analyze technology, but also its impact and meanings for the Christian faith. And while I don't consider myself a devout Christian, I would even just say I believe and I was baptized, but I don't practice often. I don't pray often. I don't go to church regularly. But it is interesting to gain that perspective. And so in this, and I'll add a little bit to it. So in this second chapter, the author even talks about simple technology like the clock and how that had an impact on the Christian faith. And I guess initially, before the clock was invented, you had the belief that God was controlling time, and there was just this natural order to time, and again that he was very much in control of it, and I guess could alter it and all of this. But then with the invention of the clock, we started to, I guess, then believe and see, right, but that a clock is measuring time, right? That time is measurable. The time is this sort of independent thing. No, it's not actually being controlled. And then that shifted views on, I guess, even hope and belief in divine intervention, right? This what do they call it? A sort of clockwork theory on creation, and maybe it's plausible that God created the universe and then just let it go, right? Set it in motion and let it go. And so if you're hoping and praying for divine intervention, no, maybe that's not coming, because the universe was created and then it was just set in motion and let go, forgotten about. Now we're just observing, sort of thing. And so I wondered, there are parts that I agree with and disagree with. If you do read the second chapter, where they're talking about the ability to, with technology and social media, easily find a community, and they say for better or worse. And when it comes to the Christian faith, and maybe when someone begins to doubt their faith prior to social media, they were not able to find a community of people who were likewise questioning their faith at that given moment. And because they weren't able to find those people, and they weren't able to, I guess, give voice to their doubts, they in time were able to move past those doubts, right? Or maybe they were able to have conversations with people in their church community and regain their faith, right? And so on. But now saying that, now with social media, you can pretty much go online and find a community for any particular type of thought or belief, and join that community. And now something like your doubt in the Christian faith would become stronger, and you'd find other people who once believed strongly and now believe less, or perhaps now don't, have transitioned to not believing at all, and you could follow a similar path. And now it does touch upon, but like ever so briefly, this idea of an echo chamber where, sometimes people do, I guess, fall into those traps where there are these maybe negative messages and things, and you can join that community where you're having maybe these negative thoughts that in time would go away, but because you've gone and sought out a particular community, they're I guess echoing that same messaging, those beliefs, perhaps negative ones, become even stronger. So it's something to be aware of. If you're looking for negativity, I guess you'll find it, right? But if you have to remember, I guess, to look for positivity, right? For uplifting people and communities. And so, I don't want to completely dismiss social media and online communities. I think there is value. We just have to be careful with the messaging and support, right? The messages, the thoughts, the beliefs that are supported within those communities, by those communities, when we join them. They also get into a little bit, and it's a bit dicey. It's not one that where they talk about, as you're joining these social communities and your identity online, say it's like disembodied, right? Like from your physical attributes. And I think they're trying to get into a little bit, Christianity, and like, well, if men and women are online, but in these communities, and their presence online doesn't really depend upon their personal attributes, like what makes a male and what makes a female, you become sort of disembodied from that, and maybe sexuality and gender identity. I just, not having any experience with that, and wanted to, I guess, really, really relate and feel for, people who are going through those sorts of things, right? Struggling with their identity, and whether male, female, or not identifying as either. I want to support those people, and so I want to be careful with that argument, and kind of caution those who might be thinking about that. But again, it's another one of those things where, like, if you're looking for a community that supports gender identity, or that's kind of anti one's choice, or independent identification of their gender and sexuality and all of that, like I don't know, it's just whatever. The chapter does get into that, so if you're thinking about it, just be forewarned. But the other thought, I guess, if we're just to add to, if you are, of the Christian faith, and thinking about, what technology may mean for faith and the church and everything, just like they say about the clock, and how it kind of calls into question some of creation, right? And how was creation and his role in our daily lives and such. I was reminded of technology like virtual reality, and even then this idea that perhaps we are living in a simulation, right? As we have now gone and created virtual reality, right? Simulated worlds, and maybe spent some time in those simulated worlds. There is then that theory that, perhaps our world is a simulation, and maybe our world was not created by a divine being, but perhaps an artificially intelligent one, and right. So there are all these other then theories out there, and whether or not you believe that they are plausible, I don't know, right? Is I guess up to you, and based on your worldview and such. But I can see the argument presented by the author that technology can call into question our thoughts, our beliefs about the universe, how it was created, and God and his power and wisdom, etc. And cause some people to doubt their faith in the church, in God. And so it's an interesting one. But I think that's everything I wanted to talk about, from the book. And I had other thoughts I wanted to share on just artificial intelligence, as it's like, reading books and reading articles and, seeing some connections and things like that. But I don't want to ramble too much. I'll probably make a separate video sharing my thoughts on this article I read recently about artificial intelligence and how I've been saying that, it's maybe coming for jobs and things. There was a study that said that, well, maybe not so fast, for certain industries and things. But, look for that video, or maybe I'll save that one for tomorrow in case I don't get around to reading anything today. But that's it for me. I don't know. Comment down below any thoughts on any of that, right? Technology and, some of the different shifts and how it's I don't know, right? Or online social communities, positive, negative, and all of that stuff. I don't know. I'm open to having a conversation on religion if that's where you're at too. I don't know. Fun stuff, man. Hopefully some good food for thought. And happy Wednesday. And I will see you tomorrow. Take it easy.